It was the winter of 2021, and I was 23, working the night stock shift at a 24-hour pharmacy just outside Toledo. That January it snowed almost every night, this fine, dry snow that didn't so much fall as hang in the air under the parking lot lights. I liked the quiet. After midnight it was just me, maybe one other person, and an empty lot outside that never seemed to hold a single footprint. The store closed its front registers at midnight, and after that I had the place mostly to myself, restocking shampoo, watching snow drift past the windows under the exterior lights. Some nights the pharmacy counter in back was empty too, nobody there at all. It didn't bother me then. I liked having the aisles to myself, the quiet hum of the fluorescents, the whole store settling into stillness around me. About 2 weeks into the new schedule, the automatic doors up front started opening on their own. Nobody walked through them, there was no one there. They'd just slide open, sit for a few seconds, and close again. It happened 4 times that first night. I figured it was the cold messing with the sensor. Deb said it did that sometimes in winter, and I didn't think about it again. Then it started happening on nights Deb wasn't even there. Always around 1 in the morning, always 4 times, then nothing. I began timing it without meaning to. I'd glance at the clock, see it was almost 1, and wait. I told myself it was cold air fooling the motion sensor. What else was I going to think? What was I even going to say if I called someone about doors? I kept telling myself the same story every night, cold air, faulty sensor, nothing more. I'd walk the aisles, glance toward the front, watch the exit sign glow above the empty vestibule. 3 weeks in, I still hadn't told my manager. It felt less like reporting something real and more like admitting I was scared of nothing, and I didn't want to be the kind of person who was scared of nothing. I remember standing near the pharmacy counter one night, watching the clock tick toward 12:58. I'd started noticing the exact minute without meaning to, like some part of me was bracing for it before it happened. And right on time, the doors up front slid open again, sat there a moment in the cold, and closed, like something out there knew exactly when to come. About 3 weeks in, I was in the pharmacy aisle around 10 past 1 when I heard the doors go again, and this time, footsteps after. Slow ones, coming down the main aisle toward the back of the store. I stood there holding a box of cough syrup and just listened, not moving, barely breathing, waiting to hear them come closer or stop. The footsteps stopped somewhere around the greeting cards, maybe 30 feet from where I stood. Then nothing. I waited a full minute that felt a lot longer than a minute, straining to hear anything, a shift, a breath, a step starting again. There was only silence pressing into that empty aisle, and the sense that whatever had stopped there hadn't actually left. I finally made myself walk toward the front to check the cameras, my back to that quiet aisle the whole way. Every step across the store felt too loud, too slow. I told myself I'd seen nothing on the footage, that it would explain everything away, and I almost believed it right up until I was standing at that register looking at the screen. The parking lot camera showed nothing at all. Empty lot, snow blowing sideways under the lights, no car, no footprints leading up to those doors that I could make out on the grainy black and white feed. I stood there for 10 minutes just watching that screen, waiting for the doors to open one more time. They didn't, not that night. It kept happening for 2 more weeks, the footsteps stopping closer to me every single time, like something was learning exactly how far it could go. The last time, they stopped 6 feet behind me while I was facing the shelf. I remember my hands shaking, still holding a can of shaving cream, too afraid to turn around and find out what was standing there. When I finally turned around, there was nobody there. But the aisle behind me smelled like wet wool, like a coat that had just come in from the snow, and it hadn't smelled like that a second before. That was the night I called my manager and told him I couldn't finish my shift. I haven't worked a night shift since, and I still don't like empty parking lots in the snow. I just moved into my first solo apartment that spring, a ground floor unit in an old converted house, 23 years old and thrilled to finally live alone. My window faced a quiet side street with a little strip of grass below the sill. I worked odd hours doing customer support chats, so I was usually still up at midnight, my laptop glowing in an otherwise dark apartment, blinds left open out of old habit. That habit came from my last place, which had been on the 3rd floor. Nobody could see in up there. I hadn't thought to change it yet. Most nights I sat at my little desk working through the quiet, the street outside empty and still, the only light in the whole apartment coming from the screen in front of me. About 10 days in, I was up around 11 when I heard someone whistling outside, just a few notes, no real tune, drifting past my window and fading into the night. I didn't think much of it. People walked dogs late, came home from bars. But the next night it came back at the same time, the same handful of notes, pausing right outside my window before moving on. I started closing my blinds after that, telling myself it was just the cold, not the whistling. I noticed it always paused for about 5 seconds right outside my window, like whoever it was checked something before continuing on. I told myself it was someone's route home from a late shift. I didn't want to be the new tenant calling the landlord over whistling. About 2 weeks in, the pattern changed. The whistling stopped outside my window, and this time it didn't move on. I sat frozen on the couch, laptop still open beside me, listening to nothing for almost a full minute, my eyes fixed on the closed blinds, waiting for it to start again or to finally just go away. Then something tapped the glass, twice, light enough that I told myself it might have been a branch, except there wasn't a tree anywhere near that side of the building. I turned off my laptop and sat there in the dark, telling myself I was overreacting, that 2 taps on a window wasn't worth calling anyone about, not 2 weeks into a new lease. The tapping didn't come again that night, and in the morning I checked the glass and the dirt below the sill, no marks, no prints, nothing I could point to and say, "Here, this happened." It escalated over the next 10 days anyway. Tapping most nights, then one night a full knock, knuckles on glass hard enough that I actually yelped out loud. I called my upstairs neighbor down with a flashlight and we checked together, nothing outside, no footprints in the grass strip, even though it had been damp from rain that evening and should have shown something, anything. Every morning after, I'd check that same patch of dirt beneath my window, and every morning it looked exactly like nobody had ever stood there at all. The night it peaked, I was in bed around 1 in the morning when the knock came again, 3 times, hard against the glass, and then a voice, low, saying my first name. Just my name, nothing else. It wasn't on my mailbox. I'd left it blank on purpose when I moved in, and I don't know how he knew it at all. My neighbor came down again, flashlight sweeping the strip of grass outside my window, both of us searching for anything, a footprint, a shape, some proof I wasn't imagining it. There was nothing there, same as every time before. I called the police right after, whispering into the phone from inside my closet, my hands barely working enough to hold it steady. Police did a full sweep of the property and found nothing, no prints in the wet grass, no sign anyone had forced their way in anywhere. One officer suggested I'd misheard a name that only sounded like mine, carried strangely on the wind. I know what I heard. I sat up in bed staring at that window long after they'd gone, certain something was still out there. I broke my lease within the month and paid the penalty without a second thought. I never found out who was outside that window, or how they knew my name, and nobody in the building ever admitted to hearing a thing. I keep my blinds shut now, no matter what floor I live on, and I still flinch at whistling on quiet streets. This happened just this past fall. I was 23, staying alone at my aunt's cabin for a week while she was out of the country, mostly to get some quiet and finish grad school applications. The cabin sat at the end of a gravel road, a quarter-mile from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by woods already going bare that late in October. I kept the porch light on out of habit, and I didn't mind being alone out there. I knew the property well. I worked most nights at the kitchen table with the radio playing low for company, papers spread out in front of me, one warm lamp the only light in the room. I'd grown up going to that cabin every summer, so the isolation never bothered me, not at first. It felt familiar, almost comforting, sitting there in the quiet with the dark pressing gently against the windows. 3 nights in, I heard something moving along the tree-line behind the cabin, a slow rustling that didn't quite sound like wind. I told myself it was deer. They came through constantly. My aunt always complained about them getting into her garden. I didn't get up to check. The rustling stopped after a few minutes, and I went back to my applications without thinking much more about it. It came back the next night, and the one after that, always right around 9, always from the same direction. On the 4th night, I finally looked out the back window with a flashlight and caught 2 points of light reflecting back at me for just a second before they vanished into the trees. Eyes, I figured. Deer, maybe a coyote. I still didn't call anyone. The 5th night, the rustling was closer, maybe 30 feet from the tree-line instead of at it, and this time I heard something metallic, a soft clink like a chain or a buckle catching in the dark. I turned off the radio to listen better, and that was when I first heard the footsteps, deliberate ones, circling the cabin at a distance, not approaching, just circling. I locked the doors that night, which I'll admit I hadn't been doing out there, out of old habit from childhood summers where nobody locked anything. My hand shook a little on the old brass lock. Around 2 in the morning I heard the footsteps stop directly behind the cabin, near the woodpile, and then nothing at all for almost 20 minutes, the silence somehow worse than the sound. I convinced myself whoever or whatever it was had finally moved on, and I fell asleep close to 4 that morning. But the 6th night was the one that changed everything. Looking back now, I think it had been circling that whole time, learning the shape of the property, the distance from the tree-line to the porch, exactly how long it would take before anyone inside noticed. In the morning I'd find boot prints near that woodpile, though I didn't know it yet, a man's, size large, leading out toward the road and just stopping at the gravel, like whoever made them had gotten into a car. No vehicle had been seen or heard by me that entire week, not once, not even in the distance. That 6th night, I was in bed when I heard footsteps come up onto the back porch itself, slow, deliberate steps on old wood I knew creaked in specific spots. They hit every single one, like whoever it was had walked that porch before, knew exactly where to step, knew that house better than I thought a stranger possibly could. Then the back door handle turned once and stopped because it was locked. I lay there not breathing, staring at the ceiling, listening for anything else. A minute later came 3 knocks, evenly spaced, deliberate, on the door, not frantic, not desperate, just patient, like whoever was out there had all the time in the world and knew I wasn't going to answer. I didn't answer. I called 911 from my aunt's landline since my cell had almost no signal out there, whispering the address with my hands barely working. The knocking didn't come again. I stayed pressed against the hallway wall, away from every window, for 20 long minutes, listening to nothing, and somehow that silence felt even less safe than the knocking had. I finally saw headlights sweeping faintly through the far window down the corridor, and I've never felt relief like that in my life. Deputies searched the property for almost an hour and found those boot prints stopping right at the gravel road. I left the next morning, a day early, and I haven't gone back to that cabin since, not even though nothing about it looks any different than it always has.